Just give me one moment here. I'm just going to make sure so that we actually get it going. Okay, fantastic. Good. So it looks like that is working. All right, so just to go through the agreements again really quick, we want to be curious in this group. We want to be respectful. We want to be succinct, get to the point. We're a bunch of executives in the room, so our verbosity has its place, but succinct is better. Show up to each session so you get a little bit of continuity. Keep the video on as preferred. And if you have AI, that's all good, just as long as you're also in the room. No just solo AI drop-ins for recording later. And if you can advise, raise your hand on the app. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little hand raise thing. You can also connect via chat, post sessions. The WhatsApp is designed for that quite heavily as well. But if you guys can share contact information online, that would be great. And how does it work? We're going to do a few member intros or some people in the group just introduce their business because we think that's always a great thing to be able to introduce your business. We've got a couple of new people in the room who are not as well known in the local community. So I'll be asking you to do that. We'll talk about a topic and then we'll have some opening questions and some closing takeaways. So that's how we'll move on with that. And then I'll talk about our next mastermind date. Would like to wish our youngest son, he's not in the room right now, but it is his 21st birthday. So our youngest kid is 21 today, which is pretty exciting. All right. So for the selected member intros, just say your name, your role or title within the business, a quick minute about your business. So this is a good opportunity to just get your business in front of some people in the room, and a recent win or a business goal that you're currently working on. And then how does someone get a hold of you would be really good as well. So I've got a couple of new people in the room here who I think if you're willing and able to step up. Amanda, I'll put you on the spot here. Why don't you do a quick intro here for yourself?
No problem. I figured you were going to pick me, Edwin. So, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda DeVries. I am the owner and creative director of my company, Eye Candy Design. We do branding and packaging for food and beverage, CPG. Most recently, I guess we got one of our projects featured on the Die Line. It's a pretty prestigious blog in our world, something that really proud to have one of our favorite projects featured there. So I guess that would be our recent win. And probably easiest way to get a hold of me would be hello@eyecandydesign.ca. I as an EYE, and all just, yeah, eyecandydesign.ca.
Yeah, beautiful. Feel free to drop your full contact information in the chat as well for that as well.
Sure.
So I kind of like surprised Darcy with his invite because him and I haven't spoken in a while. But Darcy and I had a great time a number of years ago, back when we were probably both a little bit faster. When he came and visited out on the West Coast, and we went up through some mountains together. Darcy, you've got an amazing business. I went through a big rebrand as well. Do you want to share a little bit about your company, who you are?
Sure. So we are Grupo Nutrition. I would say that we initially started focusing on endurance nutrition, but through various partnerships, Canadian Sport Institute, working with high performance athletes in Canada at the national level. It's really just morphed our business to be more of an everyday nutrition provider. That may sound weird, but our high performance athletes really lean on protein, and with their leaning on protein, so have we. We've got involved in research with McMaster University and many other academia. And it's really shaped who we are as a business. So we've gone from an endurance nutrition provider, which we still do an amazing job at, to being a general nutrition provider with the real focus on protein. Um, if you guys remember anything from what I say, 1.6 grams per kilo per pound or per kilo of body weight per day. So I'm 80 kilos. I should get about 130 grams of protein. That's what all the research says. You can go look at proteinperday.com. That's a resource that we provide. I have such a keen interest on helping people live well into their years. So Grupo Nutrition is our main brand. Polar Joe is a brand that we created for protein coffees and matcha protein. That is scaling. It's a lot of fun. I had no idea that as your business scaled that cash would be the limiting factor. So that's where we're at. Super excited. We just got into a big grocer in the States. We're in MEC, a bunch in Canada now. And I wouldn't say we're just hanging on, but we're super busy. So that would be our recent wins. To get a hold of me, I'll put it in the chat, either Darcy at grupo.com or polarjoe.com. Would be happy to hear more about what you guys do and how we might be able to collaborate.
Awesome. That's awesome, Darcy. And real huge props on the real target on so many key athletes, especially Canadian athletes. I think that's like a really, really rad thing. Yeah, fantastic. Ida, why don't you finish us off with the little intro there? Go ahead.
Sure. Good morning, guys. My name is Ida McTuffie. I'm the owner and strategy specialist at Practice Pause Media, a digital marketing media company. So I do it all. I walked the walk by myself and wore all the hats and kind of got worn out and realized it takes a good team. Tried a few people, some good ones, some not good ones, and have grown it over the last 5 years. And now I've got some really good people I trust to help me really do anything digital for your business. So right now, a current win is I've been working with a client that they kept touching base on wanting to work with me, not doing it, and then just kind of waiting because they've been trying to launch a second product for their business that they were struggling with. They finally hired me. Sorry, they finally hired me to work on a 6-month contract with them to help them finally launch and develop this product. And we have actually done it. So something that took them about 1.5 years that they couldn't do on their own, I've been able to support them, and we are launching in just a couple of weeks. Like, the product is done, the photo shoots are done, and I've kind of guided them throughout the whole entire process. And that's a really big win for them, a really big win for me to be a part of their growth. Yeah, I can throw my details in the chat of how to reach me.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really, really great. Okay, so let's dive into it today. Great little quote from Socrates here. Wisdom begins in wonder. So we're talking about critical thinking today, and this is sort of like top of mind for so many different people. How do I use AI? Where's AI going to come in? We're not actually going to talk about the AI component today. We're going to talk about you relative to a world that has AI, and how that is such an important component in what we do and how we're going to navigate this, both within our team, efficiency, all that sort of stuff, but more higher level critical thinking skills. So, you know me, I like to talk about the meta as opposed to the micro. And so we're going to talk about what this means on a larger scale. And, you know, just with a show of hands, how many people are currently using AI actively, like not dabbling, actively in your business at this point? Yeah. Okay, good. So quite a few hands going up there. All right. So we know it's a reality. You got to get ahead of the curve. You know, it's like people who said that the World Wide Web was going to be a fad. And then they were like, oh, websites are just part of the yellow pages. You're not going to be in the same space if that's with the way that your mindset is thinking. So this is sort of like the impetus of it, but we're going to talk about critical thinking. So who wants to give their perspective of what critical thinking is? And remember, it's okay to be wrong. We are huge fans of saying dumb things in rooms with smart people because that's how we learn. So who wants to unmute and say what they think critical thinking is?
I think critical thinking is removing emotions from a topic, and getting down to the heart of, you know, what you think the real crux of it is, right? Without trying to get too emotional about it.
Okay. I'm going to infer what you're kind of saying with that, with the idea. It's not always about removing emotion. More importantly, it would be about accepting the current state emotion that is there so that you can use that as a catalyst to think clearly. So sometimes we end up blocking off and suppressing these emotional states, but really the emotion is telling us that we need to do something. I talked about this in the group coaching, leadership group, psychology group coaching recently. Like if you're feeling anger, it's important to know that anger is an impetus to get you to act. It's like something's not right. Frustration means the expectation and the reality aren't meeting. And so anxiety means that you don't have clarity about the future state goal. And so the emotion is actually tying into your ability to act in a way that's going to tie towards your cognitive thinking. But if the emotion overrides you and you're not comfortable with it, now we're in that water that you're talking about. So yeah, for sure. Really, really good. I'm glad you brought emotion into the equation as well. Who else wants to add to what Matt said?
I'll jump in, Edwin.
Yeah.
I was thinking that to add to what Matt said, taking a pause and thinking about all downstream effects of any decisions that are made rather than, being reactionary. It's taking that time to look through all affected areas for whatever course of action you decide to take on a given issue.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that you said the downstream effect. So I'm actually going to bring that point up in a little bit as well. So really, really good. Okay, so what are we talking about? Okay, so where does critical thinking happen in the brain? Like where? Yeah, prefrontal cortex. I see you pointing at the forehead. Okay, so yes, it does happen primarily in the prefrontal cortex, right? This is the cognitive function of our brain, and also known as the executive brain. There are some people who have underdeveloped prefrontal cortexes. They are generally considered psychopaths, like physiological psychopaths, where they don't have the empathetic component of the prefrontal cortex. That's actually where empathy lives, is in the prefrontal cortex. It's a component of it, and so critical thinking, all of that's happening primarily up in that area. Now, there's other parts of the brain that are firing, of course, but this is really where our evolution and what set us apart as a species on the planet to be able to do all the wonderful things that we've done. I'm an optimist when it comes to humanity, just so you guys know. I think our innovation is actually a fantastic thing, and I'm not on the whole shame human ambition bandwagon. I think that human ambition is the thing that's going to continuously drive us forward and give us a better way of living. So that was a little bit of an aside, but what gets in the way? What gets in the way of us accessing our executive brain or our prefrontal cortex? Matt alluded to
Beer.
it. Sorry, who said beer?
I said fear.
Oh, fear. Nice.
But beer too.
But beer might as well.
Emotions.
Yes.
Lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
Peer
Absolutely.
pressure.
I think we
Kind of like what Grant said, but kind of self-doubt, that little voice in your head speaks against, you taking a chance.
Yep.
I think a bad experience from the past, you may let that block your view and not perform an investigation.
Right. So you've got a bias going in as well. Yeah. So where it really shuts down, and this has been pretty cool under MRI when they test people and they do fear responses and whatnot, you actually see parts of the brain go quiet and other parts light up. And primarily the amygdala lights up when the prefrontal cortex goes dark. So the primal part of the brain really starts to ignite and you get into that fight, flight, or freeze response. Also impulse. Impulsive action. Now, there is a thing called impulse control relative to EQ. Okay, there is good impulse, but the thing is that most people who are what we outwardly perceive as impulsive, like I know some leaders or some of you in the room who look impulsive, but they have actually already considered so many things like what Drew was talking about what the consequence of the downstream action will be. And so it's actually not impulsive. Like really effective leaders will come into an executive meeting and already know a lot of what the consequence of their action is. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this urge impulse that is not really controllable. Like put a chocolate in front of someone, they have to eat it. Like they're not even thinking about it. It's like an unconscious driver. A lot of people behave that way in executive space as well. So if the amygdala fires up, if your fight, flight, or freeze response fires up, your prefrontal cortex is going quiet. So your critical thinking skills are going to go down. So you got to keep that under control. Now, there's all sorts of things that we talk about this in great detail in some of the other programs, but if your ability to actually get better at navigating emotional states, because every single input will create an emotional response, your ability to manage the emotional state better is going to keep your critical thinking skills higher. If you have poor emotional breadth, your critical thinking skills will go down because your fight, flight, or fear response is going to start firing up, which creates a imbalance in the way that looks. Okay, so what are some of the components that we're talking about? So Duncan, you kind of mentioned on this. First thing is analysis. So how do you break down information? I look for this a lot. For those guys in the room that I do teamwork with as well, I look for statements that are too vague. Like, what are broad statements? Sometimes 4 or 5 executives are talking in a room, and they're actually on 4 or 5 topics. Like, you haven't isolated the topic. It's like, oh, okay, hey, well, we have this issue with this employee or this client that's going on, and so this is causing a problem with the way that the invoicing cycle is going to work and the amount of capacity and production that we're going to create. Hold on a second. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the relationship? Are you talking about your internal processes? Are you talking about interdependent processes? Are you talking about your ability to communicate and negotiate? Are you talking about the logistics of what the scope of work was? Let's isolate. Like, just all these things are being thrown in the bucket. And you got to clean that up. So anyone have someone that they have in their social network where you cannot follow their train of thought? They may be massively entertaining. Like, they may be someone you love being around in the right environment, but you're like, what are you talking about? So you just go along for the ride.
I was going to say, I have a client like that. Her emails are extremely difficult to decipher. And so I've started a spreadsheet. So every time she says, here's something I need you to do, I put it in the spreadsheet. I say, okay, can you tell me what the priority is relative to everything else we have? Going forward, it's been much easier, but I haven't had this in a while, so it's taken some getting used to for sure.
Anyone know the best way to break down information or have a system that they use to break down information to understand it better? Like, Amanda, you just mentioned one right out of the gate. Have a spreadsheet, block out in columns the topic.
Start with outcomes, figure out what their actual outcome and result of the conversation is.
Yeah. What are we trying to get out of this conversation? That'll help dictate as well. Yeah, for sure. For me, I just start writing it down. The topics that are coming up, similar to what Amanda's talking about, I just start capturing it and making some notes on my end. And I'll just start breaking it apart and be like, related, but not interdependent, or not related, or et cetera, et cetera. And I start to sort of break these down. And then you can kind of do that. Some people are better at this than others. For those who have done the Working Genius assessment, discernment is the genius that is very good at this. Invention is also pretty good at breaking down information, because in order to create an idea out of something, you have to know what the source idea is. So those are 2 sort of like focuses on that as well. Okay, so this one here, evaluation. Assessing what's being stated. What are people claiming as being relevant versus what's not being relevant? Validity. Relevance is a huge thing. There is a massive program that John Vervaeke out of University of Toronto had done, 48-hour course. He released it all for free online, called Relevance Realization. Starts from the history of man. It's fantastic. I listened to the whole thing. It was really, really fantastic. Relevance is key. Well, how do we as humans look at information and ignore this? Such an important thing, right? I'm going to use chess as a metaphor again, as an analogy. You have, after the first couple of moves, you have effectively trillions of options in a chessboard. The only other game that somewhat replicates that is Go. Okay. How do you look at what's relevant? So you're a business owner. How do you sort through what's relevant? Sometimes topics get brought up, ideas get brought into the boardroom, initiatives get put forth. You know, decision making gets put to the fore, and it's like, is it relevant? Yeah, we get it's information, but is it relevant? This is the component that AI cannot replace for you in your business right now, by the way. It will tell you all of the components. You may put in a good question that it'll answer back if you're using ChatGPT, but it's not going to tell you what's relevant. So if you want to constitute, say, a call monitoring system that uses AI, you had to know that call monitoring was relevant to your business. If you want to use a data scraping AI to figure out what's going on with invoice discrepancies, you have to know that invoice discrepancies are relevant to your business. So relevance is absolutely huge. How many people struggle with relevant information when it comes to inter-team dynamics or inter-client relationships? What are some of the issues that show up?
I think things can get quite noisy, and if there's no real result in mind, sort of like Grant said at the beginning of all the context, it can just get busy and you're sort of just communicating without a target. But if you've investigated the relevance, like you said, and you have a result that you're trying to achieve, it's a lot easier to kind of just compartmentalize, break it down into individual items, and then focus on what's important.
100%. Who right now in your business has a list of 6 to 8 most relevant goals and targets for the next quarter? Transparent. Not vague, not kind of somewhat, not I think I know, but can actually pull it up and say, these are the 6 to 8 targets that we have in the business for the next quarter. Can you confidently say that you have that? If not, you better start. Because otherwise you're going to have a ton of irrelevant information happening. Then you can expand that and say, what about for the next 6 months? And then what about for the next year? I recently did a retreat with a client. We spent 2.5 days. We blocked out 9 years. So every quarter is blocked out, and 9 years of exactly what that company is going to look like is done. How do you think that's going to impact the relevance of internal goals, OKRs, rocks if you're using EOS? How do you think their decision making and the micro decision at a decentralized leadership level is going to be positively impacted with that level of clarity? Guaranteed, right? People aren't going to run down the path of what they love to do and become very, very random if you are really, really good at this. Relevance is like a key word. I'd like if you have a whiteboard, go write relevance on your whiteboard. Just stick it up there and go, is this relevant? And feel free to ask that in your meetings as well. Okay, so now you have all this information, you broke down the information, you've evaluated the data. Inference. Some people look at data, don't know what to do with it. Okay, great. We know that this is the information, and we know that this has happened. The ability to infer and draw a logical conclusion based off of what you know is a massive critical thinking skill. Some people will be better at it than others. If you're not good at it, surround yourself with someone who is. Sometimes these people who can draw logical conclusions from limited information look like they're shooting from the hip. For those of you in this room who are really analysis paralysis people, you're going to low trust these individuals until you've worked with them for an extended period of time. Because you don't have the track record of experience to say, oh, okay, I get that this is what's going on. But if you are an absolute, data addict, and someone comes in and looks at a spreadsheet and says, oh, you know what, I think we should do this, you're going to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. How did you even come to that inference with such a high level, glance over the data? There is a talent here. Some people are very, very skilled at it. Lean on that skill if that's not you. Now, the opposite is also true. If you're not able to draw logical conclusions well enough, it means you haven't spent enough time with data. So you might be on either side of the spectrum, and it would be important to know where you tend to sit and fill in the gap with someone around you who's better at drawing logical conclusions faster. Speed is of the essence in business today. It just is. Two businesses with the exact same data, with the exact same goals, never happens, but let's just say, for the sake of this argument, and one person acts faster than the other, that person's going to win. Like, okay, I made this initiative 2 weeks ahead of my competitor, all with the same level playing field. I have the advantage. I just grabbed the initiative. So figure out if that's a weakness in your business. There's some stuff in the chat there. Simone, if anything shows up relevant in the chat, just highlight it and say, hey, there's a good point here. Because I'm not going to monitor the chat too much. But if something does show up, just be like, oh, so-and-so's got a good point. Okay, interpretation. So this is diving into the meaning of information. What does this mean? So, whenever you're diving into KPIs, for example, what do you do with a KPI? My tragic story of a KPI was when I was operating a standalone restaurant. And I was running this report every month, spending about 3 hours on running this report, emailed it off to the ownership, and no one ever looked at it.
I
It was
think
like
what are
months.
you doing? What are you doing with your KPI?
What are you doing
If
with
you're
your
just
KPI?
looking at it and not actually distributing it to anyone, it's not getting much traction.
There has to be action on the other side of a KPI. We either keep the course or we change the course. Those are your two options. It's on or off. You can't do anything else with a KPI than one of those two things. Keep doing what we're doing or stop doing and change what we're doing. That's the whole point of a KPI. There's no other purpose behind it. So the meaning of information is very, very important, right? Like if you go to the doctor, they take the blood pressure off of someone who is 21 and super healthy and using Darcy's product, then that's going to be someone very different who is like 65 and sedentary, who has a major problem with their health. Their BP numbers are going to be relevant relative to what's going on. Are the BP numbers in your business? What are you doing with that information? What's the prescription that happens downstream? Okay, problem solving. How do you effectively solve the problem? What mechanism are you using to create a solution? And is that mechanism transparent? Like, does your team know how to do it? And now this comes back to a lot of levels of decision making and other components. Does someone have the agency and the authority to not just identify, but create a solution and roll with the solution without being a bottleneck? Or does the solution have to be vetted? Like, these are important decisions in your internal dynamics of your team, right? Can someone notice a problem and solve the problem in the same heartbeat? Or do they have to notice the problem and raise the problem? This is really, really important. If you have too many always tell me's before you action the problem, you may end up with more problems. And what happens is your level of trust goes down because you're like, oh, my team has always got problems that they can't solve. It's because you've created an internal system and a culture of saying, you can't solve any problems until you verified it with me. And so you actually are dealing with more problems than are necessary. Whereas if you create yeah, go ahead.
I think this brings a good thought to mind. We just talked about this kind of recently associating a dollar value figure, like, hey, here's a threshold with where you're able to spend this dollar value to fix this problem without coming to me. The trust is there. They know that, so they don't have to come to you if it's a $5,000 problem. They'll just take care of it, and you know, therefore, you're not getting this barrage of people asking you, "Hey, what do you think? Am I approved to go ahead with this?"
Yeah,
I think that's a
100%.
big thing. Yeah.
And effective reporting structure goes a long way towards this as well. The other one is identifying problems relative to a dollar value leak. Super important. Like if you do a SWOT analysis, put a dollar to every issue that shows up. Don't just leave it as blank. So it's like, hey, you know what? We seem to have an issue with travel times when it comes to delivery of our product to X and Y. Okay, fantastic. What is the dollar value cost of that? And now you're solving dollar value cost relative to an ROI. And that can become a threshold as well. So then how do you devise a solution? AI is not going to figure that out for you, by the way. And then decision making. Who has decision making power? And the ability to rely on a decision. Now, for those of you who are straight up owners in the room with 100% role authority and 100% role accountability because of who you are in the business, if you only have yes men in your business, sort that shit out. Like you cannot have people who are just sitting around you going, yeah, great idea, because they don't want to feel like you know and you have all the authority and they're not going to challenge your thinking. If you don't have one contrarian who is also effective in the part of their job, you're missing a major gap on your growth cycle on how you're going to grow your business. You need someone who can say, are we sure? You need a black hat who is an optimist who can say, what haven't we looked at as a problem relative to that? Because you can't run with blind spots, right? Super important. You can't just run along with blind spots. Okay, so critical thinking components. This is like 6 core ones. Out of these 6, which one stands out for you? Where do you think it would move the needle for you most in your business? Is it inference? Is it creating problem-solving mechanisms? Is it your decision-making hierarchy in your business? Is it the way that you look and analyze the data? Like, where is it in this that you have to increase your process, your SOPs, your own internal leadership, executive mindset? Where is it? There's got to be 1 or 2 that are weaker than somewhere else. Write it down. And then over the next 3 months, solve it. Solve that critical thinking component in your business. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a leader you've got. Maybe it's someone that you lean on for advisement that has a weakness there. Help them out. Well, okay, well, I've got someone in my accounting department. I need them to do this. Or I've got a general manager. I need them to get better at this. And invest in their ability to do so. Okay, some key questions. This is open dialogue now. What role does experience have when it comes to critical thinking?
I think it can be your best friend or your enemy. Because sometimes we turn off our brains and we just go, well, in my experience, this is what happens and this is what the data says. But as things continue to innovate and change and ecosystems change in your business, if we're leaning too hard on our experience and not enough on what's actually happening in real time, we can sometimes be our own biggest enemy.
Okay, gotcha. So you're saying that experience can either be a friend or foe?
Yeah.
Relative to how you're treating it? Yeah, I love that.
I think to bring back your original Socrates quote, I think it was Socrates or Aristotle who said, "Wisdom is seeing the connectedness in all things," and I think experience allows you to see kind of like a step back in how things are connected, and it kind of allows you to make a better decision because of that, because you're not just looking in a narrow path and seeing how it affects a small, narrow part of the business. You're seeing how it affects, your people, your process, the result. So I think experience, obviously plays a huge part.
Um, People with experience with a proven track record will make faster decisions. And you're going to go, all right, where'd you get that from? They may not tell you. They are in the unconscious competence box. They don't know how they did the thing that they did. They don't know how they got there. Sometimes it's like, I don't know, how do I reverse engineer this? And they're going to struggle with it. It'll often sound the same way as someone who's inexperienced, who's trying to prove themselves. This is where your ability to kind of go, okay, hang on, which one of the two am I relying on? Right. Part of the reason why my industry exists is because we've moved away from a culture of village-based mentorship. I'm fine with it because now I get paid for it, but it's different than how things used to be. There used to be a transfer of data and information and wisdom in human culture, right? It was like you had elders in a village. You had people who did the thing. You had the best hunter showing the young hunter how to do the thing. You had the best basket weaver showing the younger basket weavers how to do stuff. Like that's just how it worked. And so in your business, how are you transferring high experience to low experience? Do you have a mechanism for it? If you are at a certain threshold as an executive within your market, how are you getting access to people that are one step further along within that experience in the same market? That would be a huge win for you. Oh, okay, well, I want to grow my market cap by X. Okay, fantastic. Who else did that? Now you won't be able to always role model everything that they did, but your ability to learn from their experience and say, this is what I did, what I didn't do. I made a very key decision when I decided I was not going to be a lifer in hotels in the late 90s to say, I'm going to go work for independent restaurants. And I made a goal and I said, I'm going to go work for 3 or 4 of the best restaurateurs in Vancouver. And then I did. And then I was like, I'm going to learn what I want, what I like, and what I don't like. So their experience of running these businesses made me say, I'm never going to do that. And I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that. So you can use experience as a key for sure on critical thinking. But you have to be cognizant of where you're getting that experience from and what it means.
I had one more thought
Of course.
that you provoked there, and kind of piggybacking off of what Duncan said about allowing, somebody to have a X amount of spending money before having to solve a problem. And I think when you give ownership of a role to somebody below you, it doesn't just make decisions go quicker, but it gives them the self-confidence to build upon that and to gain the experience, right? It kind of allows them to, make a mistake if it happens. And unfortunately, sometimes failures, mistakes are the best teachers, and that's how you kind of gain experience. Somebody could tell you to do something, you can try to, model it the best, but sometimes the best teacher is doing the thing itself. So allowing your workers to make that decision on their own and learn from it, I think builds experience
100%.
and builds a robust team.
One of the things to add on to that, Grant, is the idea of removing variables while someone's learning. Very, very important to have some sort of mechanism to allow that to happen. Like, for example, when I was teaching kickboxing, for someone who is pretty new, I would teach them the rotation, but no footwork. Or we would not throw hands and only do footwork. And then you combine the two together. Like when I do motorcycle training on the track, the very first few levels of California Superbike School is 4th gear, no brakes. Wow, that sounds crazy. 4th gear, no brakes. Yeah. Why? All you have control over then is your throttle. You have one input, one output. I'm not changing gears. I'm not using the brake. I'm not using the clutch. I have one input. And all I'm doing is I'm learning a mechanism on how to move around this racetrack safely. So have you removed variables to increase experience? That's going to increase someone's ability to make faster decisions and more critical decisions. If you're overwhelmed with too many inputs, your ability to have critical thinking is going to lift the amygdala, and your fight, flight, or freeze is going to come in. Now you're going to have a harder time thinking, and your eyes will narrow, and the whole thing becomes very, very tricky. Does age matter?
Experience is more important than age in a working setting.
Yes, I agree.
Matt, could you repeat what you said? I just didn't hear the first part. What's more important?
Well, experience is more important than age. Just because you hire someone who's older doesn't mean that they have the experience, right? When you're
Yeah.
changing career per se, right?
Yeah. We have a very young team. We have a few seasoned individuals. I'm seasoned, but I've got a very young team, and we've been very fortunate to hire the right personalities. And often they don't come with the experience that you just, described, but it's their ethic, personality, willingness to think out of a box, challenge. Those characters are paramount for us. And we've just been very fortunate. But personality is so important.
Absolutely.
Edwin, I'll
Yeah.
just chime in here. I know that working in the restaurant industry, obviously, like I'm I'm in my 50s now, and working in the restaurant industry, I've had the luxury of working with lots of young people, and they continually surprise me all the time. At like, some young people just have amazing critical thinking skills and come up with amazing solutions, and so I don't think age matters at all. I've come across some really intelligent, empathetic individuals that are 20 years younger than me, and so I get pleasantly surprised all the time.
Physiologically, there's one factor that impacts age, though, on both sides. The first one is that majority of our gray matter has not fully kind of like baked until about age 27. So that's a reality. So sometimes you see a lot of personality shifts between someone who's like 16 to 28. Like, oh, they were kind of this way, kind of this way. The strength of that is that who you have at a young age brought into your team can evolve a lot by the time they're 30. Like a 10-year tenure of someone in your business can really see a huge amount of growth, and they'll, really like open up your eyes to how wonderful that can be. The one factor that you have to mitigate against is that at a younger age, below that, now it's sort of a decreasing curve on this. So closer to that sort of late 20s age bracket, is that the ability to actually have the mechanism in the brain to understand long-term consequence, like what Drew was talking about, is lower. Physiologically, that's just how the brain operates. So it's one of the reasons why kids, teenagers into young 20s oftentimes behave in a way where you're like, what were you thinking? Didn't you think that this would be the consequence? They're like, no. And it's just how it is. They didn't. Like it actually, the mechanism to make sure that sort of like cheesecloth didn't trap. They have like a big colander with huge holes in it. Like it just went straight through. So it's important to recognize that is the thing, and that is a component that you just have to be realistic about in the development of a human being. Okay. What about risk? How does risk play into critical thinking?
I mean, every choice has a consequence, good or bad. So
assessing risk is important, right? Part of this is like what we talked about earlier. Could you put a dollar value against the problem or the issue with a leak in the business? That's going to let you know where it is. But going through that original list of what are we looking at? What is the actual thing? What's the outcome we're expecting? What's the deviation curve between what our decision is to what the outcome is effectively going to be? All of these things kind of play a role. But risk plays a factor. So we know that someone's internal risk ratio is subjective. Like if you go to a casino, betting $100 on a blackjack table for one person might be like a massive heart palpitation. Meanwhile, for someone else, it might be $1 million. Like their relative ratio of risk could be very, very different. And so a lot of this is going to be based around, what transactional dollar are you thinking about? What's your invoice cost? If you're working in the $500 range of your business constantly, that's a very different thing than if you're working in the $500,000 or $5 million range of your business. And is the risk recoverable? Now, ironically, the higher the risk, the lower the critical thinking naturally will happen. And so you have to invert that. You're actually going to be better at critical thinking through low risk scenarios because your odds of getting into a fight, flight, or freeze response relative to the problem is going to go down. No one ever had a boardroom fight over which, whether, there was too much foam in the cappuccino or not, right? It's like a low risk thing. But someone might have a fight in a boardroom over something that's like, well, if we do this, what does it mean, et cetera, and then elevation of emotions come up and all these other things happen because the risk assessment is higher. It's like, oh, well, is this a bet the farm decision or not? And suddenly critical thinking goes down. It's actually when you need it the most. So risk plays a massive factor in critical thinking. So here's a task for you guys to do. Take a look in the last 6 months to 2 years, depending on how your business arcs look, right? Are you very sort of week-to-week business? Are you a very like 2-year project type business? Figure out whatever timeline makes sense. And rank the risk-based decisions that you had from highest risk to lowest risk. Maybe it was a key hire. Maybe it was a market expansion. Maybe it was a new product line. What were the highest risk things that you played? And then give yourself a score on how well you navigated that risk relative to your critical thinking skills. Reflection is key to growth. So you guys who work with me directly all the time, you know that this is one of my favorite words on the planet, frameworks. What frameworks do you regularly use for critical thinking? If you are winging it, you don't have enough frameworks because it's not replicatable and you haven't systematized a format in your business. I recently went through a conflict management framework with the guys at Paris, and I've done some of that with some of you, the rest of you guys that are here as well. For those who are at the workshop on February 1st, we went through a whole ton of frameworks, right? Leadership Trinity and the executive pyramid development, 5-level decision-making, those were some frameworks that we talked about. What frameworks are you using? Solve for X is another one. Are you relying on a framework to mitigate against the amygdala hijack? And is it something that you have as a process in your business? So that, hey, when this thing happens, boom, this automatically shows up and you're like, okay, guys, we're going to use this framework to solve this problem. Does that exist or not? So who has some frameworks that they regularly use in critical thinking that they can share? We've got about 4 minutes before we go to takeaways.
I mean, I can't say we implement it every day, but there is the Eisenhower matrix, which I got from UN. You know, like, what is the priority here? Is this truly urgent or is this really important? You can break down your current tasks, your current.
I just released a YouTube video called Code. For those who are wondering, I actually had a dream about that. And so I woke up the next morning and wrote that framework down. So that's about like, what's my cognitive function? What am I focused on? What are my objectives and goals? What difficulties are going to get in front of me? And what is my emotional state relative to this? And if you work through that process, that's a critical thinking model, right?
I have a framework that I use that you start with the outcome you desire. You explore why that's important and make sure that's aligned to your actual vision and values. And then you pinpoint all the different decisions and tasks that are related to that. Kind of gives you an overview to make sure it's aligned with your long-term vision.
Yeah, beautiful. Is this a
I think
blind
an
spot
easy
for?
one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I think an easy one that we use regularly here is with hiring individuals and using the mission, vision, values as a framework to hire against. So implementing questions in the interview process that identify whether someone is aligned, right, and grading their interview performance on those mission, vision, and values to decide whether or not they're actually going to be a fit with the team.
Yeah, beautiful. That's the for and against, right? Give me a for, give me an against. Yeah, 100%. Massive win. To share what Drew's talking about, this is fundamental to any onboarding system. Once you know your values, you start asking these for and against questions against those values. And so that ties so heavily into effective hiring. And you can use other beneficial things to really grow your team, out. Okay, so here's what I want you to consider. One step that you can take today to improve your critical thinking. One, you can't change a million things. Pick one, double down on it. You will not be replaced by AI. In fact, you will become way better if you end up diving into your ability to become more effective at this. Right? It's like, you're never going to lose the knowledge of being the hunter. You're never going to lose the knowledge of being the basket weaver and the way in which you transfer that over, even though baskets got better and spears got better, which is effectively what AI is. It's a tool. Okay. All right. So closing takeaways. Before we go to closing takeaways, I just want to give a quick update here because I don't want to lose out. The Mastermind community is up. It's on WhatsApp. If you haven't joined, then get in there. What are the benefits? Okay, peer support, business discussions, business networking, solving problems, and coaching access. So all those things are benefits to the community. The way the community works is that there's a community and then there's rooms. Just pick the room. If you want to mute it, mute it. If you want to be actively involved, be actively involved. If you want to jump in and solve a problem and jump back out because you're super busy, do that. This is not about time sinking, you guys. It's about adding value to questions so that you're not having to go, how do I deal with this? The whole idea of, can we create a community that ends up sharing knowledge so we can all succeed? That's the goal. Downstream, I'm starting, this is my working title, it's called the boardroom. This is going to be an in-person platinum level CEO group. It'll be most likely once every 2 months to start. There's going to be some strict requirements to join this. It'll be every 2 months, full day. And we're talking big problems, big solves, and reach out privately for more information if you're interested, or I'll reach out to you if you are already in the sort of qualification bucket. Okay, so open questions, closing takeaways. Relative to this, not relative to this. Who wants to start? We've got like 4 minutes.
I'll say something. I think again, one thing that just kept running through my mind as we went through the discussion on critical thinking is a point that Grant made when he spoke around just kind of like the post-mortem and the effectiveness of that. Whether it's a project work that you're doing or a small item. I think going through the exercise of pulling the team together and breaking down what worked and what didn't is just so important because again, experience matters, yes, but if you're not taking the time to really pull apart the inner workings of how a project went and making, better, more informed decisions for future projects, I think there's just a huge missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
That's a takeaway from me.
I'll jump in. I just wanted to say thanks for having me today, number one. And number two, I wrote down the word inference because I think in terms of, when you said list the one that you think needs the most work on, I'm going to be looking into that a little bit more. I definitely think that I have access to a lot of data. I'd like gathering the data. It's just making sense of it and making use of it is sort of the area that I think I could do some work on. So that's my takeaway.
Nice. Trev, I think you unmuted there as well.
Yeah, just quick thing. So thanks again for having me today as well. It's my first time in this group and really appreciate the opportunity. One thing came to mind about critical thinking, and I'm not sure if you've dealt with it, Edwin, but the thought of confirmational bias, looking for supporting evidence to support an outcome that's you've already predetermined. And I'm really trying to get away from that. You've already made the decision, and now you're just looking for supporting evidence along the way. I'm not sure if anyone else has kind of identified that in their critical thinking process, but I think it's a big problem when I do sit down with maybe people who are not as experienced in these forums. They don't identify it, and they're just constantly looking for items to prove their theory or their thoughts.
Yeah, really great. I've got one comment towards that before I just go to the closing slide here. And that is, I ask people, what do you want to be right about, the decision or the outcome? If they want to be right about the decision, they're in bias. That's fundamentally the difference. It's a hard question. Okay, next date, May 30th. So that's again last Friday of every month, 7 a.m. So we can still get back to closing out our week strong, and 7 a.m. Pacific time. Again, reach out, WhatsApp, email, whatever happens to be, and really, really great discussion today. So fantastic time. We will see you in a month. If not, for some of the rest of you, I'll see you in either a few hours or next week. All right. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, Edwin.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Bye.
Thanks, Evan. See you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.